This is the old high school on High Street, and I have seen a picture with Prof. Hamilton's picture in the corner. So apparently he was principal at this time. Do you know anything any more about that building?
Well, my mother graduated from there in 1907. I believe this was the first high school building. They had other quarters downtown before this for a school.
Would you believe that when we had a rifle club in Caribou, we had a rifle range up in the very top of that, and we taught the girls rifle team for Caribou?
The rest of the building downstairs was the USO building during World War II.
There was another little, it was an elementary school down behind that, wasn't it?
Yes, separate building. It's finished.
This is a high school that was built on Glen Street. And you seem to remember them telling about this.
I believe this was the first one on Glen Street, and it was finished, but I don't know if they ever held class in there. It burned, and the second one was built, and before it was much more than half built, it burned. I remember when I was about 6 or 7 years old, a bunch of us kids were playing in the cellar, and we found some money, some pennies and nickels and dimes, and we thought that was a real treat. We weren't long in spending it for penny candy.
Yeah, the one that they replaced that with, I hope many times that it would burn. Here's a picture taken from the Marr house, and I think that's almost across the road from the high school. That field on the right would be now the Tig Park, and up in the background is the Caribou grandstand. And I don't know whether they call that Tig Park or not, but that's the Trotting Park.
Fairgrounds.
Fairground. This picture was given to me by Norma Marr, and I presume that's part of her family there. I don't know. I've asked a lot of people my age what this place was, and nobody seems to know. But I can assure you Prescott does. Tell us about it.
This little log cabin was used by the Caribou Winter Carnival for several years, and it is located in what we call the square. The house on the right, the White House, was the Elmer Trask house, and it was torn down in the late 30s, and the Caribou Municipal Building is built just this side of it. Where this house is in this picture is about where the little, what we call the little bank, the Caribou Federal Savings and Loan. Then going beyond that is the Mrs. P.J. Powers house, who owned the Powers Theater, and the next one to that was Levitte Searway, and the next one not shown, going up High Street on the right, was the Charles Stetson house.
Or where was the Pendel house?
Pendel house was beyond that, from where Hayes Filling Station was located, the so-called Allen lot.
Oh, that's right too. Yeah. But the municipal building today would be almost where that person is standing.
Yes, where that person is, and behind that was, when we were kids, was a lot where the farmers used to tie their horses up when they came to town on Saturday for shopping.
This is kind of a later date picture, so we put it in here.
About middle 1930s.
Now, we just showed you a picture of the Caribou Winter Carnivals, and I think they called it Santa Claus's house, where we used to get down and get candy. They tore that down, or they moved it out. I guess it was just on skids, wasn't it? In later years, they built these ice castles for the Winter Carnival. What about this one? Do you know anything about this?
Well, Jimmy Cox and Lawrence Elliott, Lawrence Elliott was in the ice business, I remember, helped build some of these castles. Quite a job. Usually took about a week.
That's quite a castle.
Put lights in it. The ice castle we just showed was built in 1937. This one 1940. In the background you can still see the Bartlett Estate buildings. If those buildings could talk, they have seen a lot of activities over the years.
We used to have a band platform down there, they hauled in down the square, and they built several different ones of these, didn't they?
Yes, they did. They built a battleship one year.
I was with my brother Claude when he took this picture. Then you had to have a time exposure, and of course there was no such thing as colored lights, and if you did have colored lights, all you had was black and white film to take it. This was taken, of course, in 1929. Now we're in the square. We're getting near urban renewal time. I guess this is just before urban renewal, isn't it? What about that filling station?
This filling station was built by the Powers brothers, and as you can see, going down the hill, you can see the steam laundry down the bottom of the hill. All these buildings now are made of bricks. And there was a lot of controversy about this urban renewal, tearing down these nice buildings.
Who else had that filling station?
Pat Sear had it. He had several taxis, and he operated from this filling station for many years.
Well, when did Hayes and Ken have it?
Hayes Gahagan and Ken Willett had it before the war, and a few years. No, I guess they had it after the war.
That down there, that's nothing but a parking lot now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, Main Street, as we see it there, is in the same place that it always was.
Running north and south.
Yeah, you can come up Main Street and right up North Main, and that street was never changed. They didn't change. You come into that from High Street, different than you used to, of course. But it's never been changed, has it, to your knowledge?
The only change was the buildings this side of the filling station, as they burned, they were taken out. The street was made wider, was later called the square.
Yeah, that's from early time.
Right, and that's where we had the band concerts.
Uncle Edgar used to park crossways. The Holmes block that we've shown you pictures of is gone, and this little building down there in the background is Willard McLaughlin's insurance company. All the other buildings have gone except that, haven't they?
This is the start of urban renewal, about 15, 16 years ago.
They haven't touched the Bartlett block yet.
No.
Another shot taken just before urban renewal. Can you remember some of the places that used to be in there?
This is the Hackett block. Where the sign says Radio Shack for many years on this corner was Charles Gammon Drugstore.
Didn't that have a beautiful ice cream parlor in
Right. The next building was the Hackett Clothing Store. Later years, Ned Martin had this store. Then Briggs Hardware and Doctor's Pharmacy on the corner.
Oh.
The next building is Caribou National Bank block, later bought by the Rustic Trust Banking Company. This is the former location of the Grimes block many years ago. Burned, I believe, in around 1890.
Okay, I would guess, yeah. 93, 92, 93, my guess. These buildings, when we get on to Sweden Street, we've got some older pictures of these same buildings. But this is the way they were just before they were torn down. You don't know when that Michel fire was, do you, when that burned?
About 1947. I remember I was working on my house and I heard the fire horn blow up on Coolidge Avenue, and I came down, and this part where Briggs Hardware up to Michel's corner was all afire. Lloyd's Market was also in there, and there was 5 apartments upstairs, and I remember a crowd of us carried all the furniture out, saved it all, saved a lot of things in the grocery stores. I remember carrying out, helping Murray Currier and Dave Faddy, who owned the store at the time. Lloyd's Market was trying to carry a cash register out. Murray sat it down. He said, Dave says, "Leave it, let's get out of here, we're going to burn out." So we took off, and the fire was licking at our heels.
That, they put firemen right up on top of that Hackett block, you remember?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
When that burned, and there was some firemen almost went through the roof. The roof caved in.
It's quite a fire. We've got some pictures of that we'll show a little later. Here's a picture of the town just before urban renewal. And we're going to try to point out some of the things in it. What's this one?
This is Municipal Building, built in 1939. There's High Street. Here's where what we used to call the square. This is the Holmes block and the Hackett block. And right up Sweden Street, Post Office, Powers Theater.
Behind there was...
Over in back here was the Caribou Hotel. There's the so-called Bean Block.
A&P store was in there.
A&P store was there for many years. Water company right here. And this was Lombard Incorporated, oil and gas business, Eastern Auto, and later years Rustic Republican office right here.
Now, move over to what was, we think was the Burley Hotel.
Burley Hotel was located right in this area.
No,
This is the penny store.
penny store, right?
Right here.
Yeah.
That was the Lyman Hotel.
Yeah, and then across was the Burley.
Right here was where the Burley Hotel was.
Yeah.
Right in here.
Yeah. Now you come up further. What's this building this way?
This is
Is that the Grange?
no, well, it's where the grain store used to be. It's full of small stores now. F.W. Woolworth was there for many years. Now there's several small stores in there. Freem's Jewelry, a restaurant, card shop. This up here is Dr. Pratt's veterinarian. Over here was L.S. Hall, W.F.S. Tibbetts building.
This is where Pearson had his
Right here was Pearson Motor Company, later Graves Food Store.
Then you got
and the
the
Baptist church is right here.
Methodist Church.
Methodist Church,
Right.
right here where these trees are.
Yeah. Here's a picture taken right from the square, looking right up Sweden Street with the Clark block on the left. There's one thing I'd like to mention before we go into this, is way to the upper end you can see the Methodist church steeple, it being on the left-hand side of the road. Can you tell us about the others?
After the Clark block, when we were growing up, was the Ansel Anderson clothing store, Briggs Hardware, Lloyd's Market, Jim Michaud's grocery store, then the Caribou National Bank, later the Rustic Trust, and Ralph Roberts had a barbershop next, and there was a Norell's harness shop. In later years there was the Cloverdale grocery store, later First National, and up to where Hines and Smith was, just before the church tower steeple, was a theater built by P.J. Powers. Then later he built a building that is still standing today called the Powers Theater. The next building would have been the Burley Hotel. And up through later years, the G.M. Morgan Company had a large furniture store, which is a theater today.
The alleyway on the other side of that Morgan store was between the store and that church, the Methodist church. That's how close it was. And there was a livery stable. Now this is what Ralph told me. I can't remember it myself.
This is the other side of Sweden Street. On the right, behind that telephone pole, is the Holmes block, and there was a porch built up on the third story. The first store, where the first team is, was the S.L. White drugstore, later Walter Collins and Peter Murphy, and it was called Skates's drugstore. Then H.O. Spencer had a jewelry store, and Havy's Pharmacy, and the Caribou Ford Motor Company in later years was on the right. Then you come up to where it looks like there are some trees. That was near Record Street. And just before that was Spalding's Hardware. Then where the trees are is where the post office is today. And then the Lyman Hotel, and the grain store, and some livery stables. Fred Norton had a farm store in there, sold John Deere. And then Dr. Pratt, the early veterinarian, and up to Jim Miller and Maynard Miller had a filling station. Then across the street was the Methodist Church.
There, this shows a better picture of the steeple across the road, and about the same pictures we had before, only a little later, it looks like.
Yes, and on the corner, over the drugstore, they have a porch up there now. And then the next building was the H.O. Spencer jewelry store. At one time there was a theater in there, movie theater, when the movies first came out.
Where did you go in there, Prescott? Right? Was it?
Right where the second sign is hanging over the sidewalk from the corner here on the right. Right there.
Right there.
It was
Now,
an
what
alleyway.
Was an alleyway. What did they call that theater? Can you remember? You said your mother and father used to come home from down there.
Yeah, the movies, you had to turn a crank to run the projectors. And Ethel Roberts used to do that. And Raymond Swenson Sr.
We're way up Sweden Street looking down towards Main Street. We should mention in here that that building that's in the middle of the picture way down being the Clark building is before our time. Go on.
The building looks like it's right in the street was called the Caribou House. And then coming up Sweden Street on the right hand side was the Clark building and the grocery stores and the bank. C.P. Huzzy, who was an early businessman.
Wouldn't it be right in there somewhere?
No, back a little bit before the Michel building. Right in there.
Yeah, okay.
C.P. Huzzy was right where the pointer is now. Later years it was A&P and Lloyd's Market in the same spot.
This is the bank?
This is the bank building, and there were several storefronts there, and Norell's harness shop, and
This would
probably some harness shops before that.
Are we in Hines and Smith?
Jim Glenn and some of the old timers.
Is Hines and Smith right about there?
Probably the next one up, right in there somewhere was Hines and Smith's. Then the Powers Theater in later years.
You're right. There's the big fire that we were telling about back along. That Prescott went down and helped him clean out the store. Which was it? Would be the store next to that Michel store, wouldn't it?
Yes, the one with the flat roof. That was originally the C.P. Huzzy. And then the A&P store was in there one time after that. And Lloyd's Market. And Jim Michel had the one on the corner. The apartments were upstairs in these buildings. There were 5 in all.
There's a fireman on top of the Hackett block over there. Look at it.
Yeah.
This fire, they set up that old parade fire engine we had, and that pump to that fire. Pearly Alley. I got a picture of Pearly Alley working on that big pumper.
The old La France.
The old La France, yeah. Here's a building, the Grimes block. This is before our time, but we've done a little research and we'd like to throw it in here. This would be on right across from where that fire was, isn't it?
Yes. Michel's corner is on the left-hand side. Mr. Morgan, when he came to town here, opened up a furniture store on the ground floor in this building. And this would be Clyde and Cliff and Ralph Morgan's dad. And the building burned, and he went out of business, and he had to set up in other quarters. And later on, he built a building in back of this building, G.M. Morgan Company. I remember the big sign on the side of the building. It was there many years until they built the newer building up on Sweden Street.
But this is right where the Caribou National Bank and then the Rustic Trust are the same building. This is where that place was, wasn't it?
Yes, the Rustic Trust was there when urban renewal started and was torn down.